So I'm going to quickly go over how this works. Your information is going to come up here, which is going to come from the Inputs tab after you fill in your company information. The homeowner's information, which is right here, is going to come from the contract. So you're going to need to fill out these lines right here on the contract, which is just their name and address. Now the invoice, you can come to this square and type in any price you want, but for convenience and speed, its default is to just show this price right here. Okay, and then you'll notice at the bottom it's going to show what the discount was and the discounted price at the bottom. All right, now I live in a place where sales tax is not needed for services. If you do, you can hit these buttons right here and then it'll show the sales tax, and you'll put in your sales tax amount in here. So if you live in a place that needs that, just hit those buttons and then it'll show that. And then just like you would export the contract, you're going to go File, Download PDF, and it will export the invoice for you. Now if the homeowner is requesting proof of payment like a receipt, you're going to click on this guy, and as soon as you bring it into the invoice, it'll be a part of the invoice. I like to put it down here. You can put it anywhere on the contract. It is see-through a little bit, but I like to put it right here. I just think that has a nice look to it. And now you'll see when we export this, it looks nice and it shows the homeowner that they paid the invoice. I made this invoice adaptable and easy to edit and change. So if you wanted to add something, maybe they added shed at a later date or something like that, you could come in here, press 1, say it's $500, and you can put it in there and it'll add it to it. Maybe you need to subtract for something like removed shed, and then you can put -500 and it will subtract it from the total cost. And then maybe you want to show that they paid a deposit or something. You can put paid deposit and then put like a -2500 or something here. You got to put the 1 in there because it's basically going to multiply this by this. You can be very creative with it. Let's say that you don't want this discount here, you don't want that to be there. Just come right here and press delete, and it'll take it out of there and show that it's the same price. If you want to clear this up too, you can hide that just to make it a little bit closer to it. You can mess around with this and basically make it say whatever you desire quickly and easily. Now there is this itemized invoice here, and I generally don't use this one, especially for a homeowner. The only time that I use this one is when it's insurance work. So I live in a state where we have a lot of hail, and when it comes to something like roofing, almost nobody actually pays for a roof out of pocket because hail damage happens. And a lot of times on these hail claims, there is paint, and they usually only approve something like one side of a house, sometimes the whole house, and the insurance company will specifically request an itemized invoice just so they have a record of how much things cost. And that's the only time I really use this one, is when they specifically request it. If you want to use one like this because you think it looks more professional and you want to show the homeowner something like that, go ahead and use it. And what's really nice about this is you can see it outlines all these things. And if I come into the measurements right here, see we've got 29, and I add something new, like let's come into this one, we'll put some kind of window, say wood windows that open, and I'll put a couple here. Now when I come back to this itemized invoice, you'll notice it added another line in there, and it's right here, and it's going to show there's 10 windows. We're charging $122.89 per window, and it's adaptive to where if I come back into the measurements and I were to change the trim paint to say something really expensive like emerald, go back to the itemized invoice, you'll see those all change to be representative of what we're charging, and they'll come out to the price down here. So let's say you have a house that has a ton of stuff, or maybe it's a commercial job and you expand this and you have a lot of different items in there. On the itemized invoice down here, there is this plus button, and that'll open up more lines. Just if it ends up being all the way down at the bottom and goes into more lines, just open that up. And one more trick, if you did want to even clean this up, like maybe make it end right there, you highlight those, you right click, and then you press hide, and it'll shorten that up for you just in case you think that looks more professional or something like that. Go ahead. It really doesn't make a big difference, but that's what this itemized invoice is for. And again, if you want to mark it as paid, you just click here. As soon as you bring this into the contract, it'll be marked as paid, so we can go File, Download PDF, and this is how it'll look when you give it to the client. One last thing I'll mention about invoices is you want to keep it simple. If you're doing residential work, a lot of times the only paperwork needed is the contract between you and the homeowner. However, when you are working on commercial jobs or business to business, they usually are going to need an invoice. Now, one quick note about working with businesses, you might submit an invoice and they'll come back and say, hey, we need an invoice number on the invoice because their accounting system requires them to enter a number in order to cut a check. If that's the case, you can just come here, type invoice number, and then put a number. Most accounting systems are going to start at 1,000, so I would put something over 1,000, something like that, and then there'll be an invoice number there.